Alright, so today we are going to look at our CSQ3 from ADAS tutorial. Alright, so let us have a look at the following questions. So first question that we have is as follows. Right, from extract 1, identify one undesirable macroeconomic consequence. Alright, alleged to occur as a result of your falling population. Okay, so if we look at the extract 1, all right, so what exactly is this undesirable macroeconomic consequence? Let us look, okay? So they mentioned about how population increase was a major factor behind economic progress that Japan made in the 20th century. All right, and essentially the idea of economic growth depended on the rates of population increase and technical progress. All right, so right now, as per what question is asking for, as a result of falling population, right, how will this impact Japan? Okay, so basically the question here, as you can see, when there's a falling population, when there's falling population, all right, and this falling population is because of the lower fertility rate. Because of this lower fertility rate, there will be a decreasing labor force lah. So these are the causes of a falling population. So when you actually have all these, there will be a decline in the capacity to supply, okay, to produce your goods and services, as well as your fall in your AD. All right, because when there's a fall in AD, what causes this fall in AD? Essentially, aging population. All right, and with falling population, savings rate will fall. Right, so your savings rate will fall, and then as a result of this, your interest rate actually increase. Okay, and when interest rate increase, cost of borrowing essentially increase lah. So C will decrease, I will decrease. And because these are components of AD will decrease. Okay, so essentially, as per what extracts say, okay, as you can see in this para, all right, a fall in population will cause your AD to fall. Okay, likely due to a fall in C, or a fall in your productive capacity, because they mention about the capacity to supply. So this capacity to supply, you can link it to your productive capacity. Okay, essentially your YF lah. YF is your output at full employment. Okay, where all your resources, all your factors of production are employed. Okay, and when AD falls, or when LRAS fall, shift to the left, these two will cause negative economic growth lah. So this is the undesirable macroeconomic consequence. Okay, so I hope you are able to understand and see how to go about answering this question. This is 1 mark only. All right, so let us look at the next question, question B. What conclusion would you draw from table 1 about the overall economic performance of Japan? All right, you're asked to compare 2008 with 1990. So you look at the set of numbers, okay, in 1990 and 2008. So question is asking about economic performance. And if you recall the last lesson that we did, when we talk about economic performance, you want to talk about your 4 macro goals. What are the 4 macro goals? All right, you look at economic growth. All right, so you look at GDP growth rates. Okay, you look at your inflation. Inflation, you can look at your CPI lah, consumer price inflation. You look at your employment level. And of course, your balance of payment. Okay, so we will break it down one by one. All right, so we need to look at what has happened to the following areas. all right, at least for Japan. And we're asked to compare across the 2 years. So between the 2 years, 1990 and 2008, all right, has Japan seen an improvement or has it seen a worsening of that particular aspect? Okay, it could be in the growth, it could be inflation, it could be employment level, or in terms of BOP. All right, so if we look at the data that we have, okay, you can see how in 1990, Japan saw positive economic growth. All right, the economy was growing, GDP was increasing by 5.6% compared to the previous year, like 1989. In 2008, all right, you actually see that this economic growth figure, take note, this is positive, and this, on the other hand, is actually negative. So what does this tell us about your GDP? So GDP in 1990 was actually increasing, whereas GDP in 2008, because of the negative number here, GDP is actually falling. All right. And what can we say about this? Okay. So as you can see here, GDP growth rate higher in 1990 compared to 2008. All right. It's positive and it's higher lah. Positive versus negative. All right. So what we can see here is basically there's a contraction of the economy in 2008 because GDP fell. Whereas in 1990, there was an expansion of economy. GDP increased. All right, so this is our preliminary analysis, at least for in terms of EG. 1 year there was positive, 1 year there was negative. The positive one suggests that the economy was growing. There was positive economic growth. The negative one suggests that GDP has fallen, there's a contraction of the economy. All right. Okay. For question B, what conclusion? Sorry. The next one that we want to look at is, of course, your consumer price inflation. So again, we look at 1990 and 2008. So if you look at the two sets of number, CPI here, you see it can be positive, it can also be negative. So if it's positive inflation rate, this tells us that your GPL has risen. Right, but when it's negative, basically you have what we call a deflation. And in this case here, GPL actually decreased. But if we just focus on the 2 years, 1990 and 2008, you can see that the prices, GPL, in both years actually increased. Okay, both 2008 and 1990. But if you look at the magnitude of the increase, you can quite clearly see that 1990 saw a larger increase because it's 3.1 versus 1.4%. Okay, so GPL increased slower in 2008 compared to 1990. So cost of living has increased over time, a bit at a slower rate because your prices have been increasing. All right. When the increase in price actually slow down, sometimes it might be seen as a positive signal. All right. Whether price increase, price decrease, okay, when price increase, we need to look at what's the root cause of this price increase. Because this price increase here, it can be due to increase in AD. All right, if it's a AD factor. It could also be caused by AS when there's a decrease in SRAS or a decrease in your RRAS. So when GPL increase, you need to look at the root cause. All right, and the magnitude of the increase in your GPL. So in this case here, both numbers seem to be quite okay. I mean, it's 3.1 versus 1.4. All these are quite acceptable increase in GPL. Most importantly, you need to see what's the root cause. If the root cause is due to an increase in AD, then it could be positive because if you draw your ADAS diagram and you draw your AD increase, when you're producing near full employment, you can see that some level of inflation is inevitable. So if it's due to an increase in AD, it can be seen as positive signal because there is still some economic growth that come along with this price increase. All right. However, if the increase in GPL was caused by a fall in AS, okay, then it may not necessarily be a good thing. Okay, so it is important for us to see what's the main cause of it lah. All right. Okay, next we look at unemployment level 1990 versus 2008. You can see that unemployment rate in 2000 is higher lah. All right, and in 1990 is lower. So what does this imply to us? Resources are not fully utilized. Okay. And last but not least, BOP. Okay, important thing for you all to take note when we talk about BOP, your BOP is made up of your current account, your CA, made up of your capital financial account, your KFA. So in this case here, they only give us current account. All right. So if we look at the current account, okay, current account here, okay, it includes your goods and services balance, your income balance, and of course your transfers. Okay, so what can we say? We can see here that the both year you saw positive. So this suggests that there's a surplus in both year lah, the surplus in the current account. All right, and then you can see that 2008 is of course much bigger. So assuming ceteris paribus, this would suggest that BOP surplus might have increased lah. That means you assume KFA to be constant. All right, if your CA are these two values, then of course your BOP surplus might have increased. All right, and this can be explained by an increase in export competitiveness. Your exports are becoming more and more popular lah. That's why your X minus M, it might have increased. All right, or there could be a sharp decrease in the level of imports due to slowdown in domestic economic activity. Maybe incomes are falling, so there's a decrease in the level of imports. All right, so these are the four aspects that you need to talk about: your economic growth, inflation, your employment, and your BOP. So overall, make a conclusion, all right, and you can see that quite clearly, economy is suffering from a recession. Based on what we have here is negative. All right, and unemployment was higher. So the economy seems worse off in 2008. This one nothing conclusive. This one also nothing much to be said. So we base it on these two to say that my likelihood is that it has become worse off for Japan. Alright, and that's our answer for this question. Okay, so every time you have economic performance, please remember, look at the four aspects, four macro goals. Alright. Okay, right now we are going to look at the next question. How in Japan economy got stuck in a rut of low investment, low growth, and confidence. So if you look at extract 4, okay, that particular sentence came about in this second parallel. Economy got stuck in a rut of. So it's important for you to read through before you understand. Okay, so down here you can see by the end of the year, Japan will experience the biggest decline of any major economy since US economy contracted by a quarter. So what is happening in Japan is that first quarter output fell by 4%. And this is attributed to a fall of 26% in your Japan's exports. Okay, so your exports are falling. Japan's exports falling. And what is the reason behind this is because of your credit crunch. All right, so what exactly is a credit crunch? Okay, so this one happened around 2008, 2009. So this is associated to your global financial crisis. Okay, so what happened was this global financial crisis led to this so-called credit crunch, right, whereby banks became hesitant to lend out credit. Okay, and this world credit crunch caused a collapse of export orders. And for Japan, because of its unique reliance on industrial exports, Japan was particularly hard hit. And it goes on to say that reasons for these problems are unlikely to disappear soon. Okay. So, and this problem actually started way back in 1990 because of what had happened. There was a similar credit crunch. All right, and banks had lent too much. So once they faced heavy losses, they were unable to recoup back whatever bad loans that they lent out. The property market collapsed. And since then, the economy got stuck in this low investment, low growth, and low confidence. So essentially, if you go and read, Japan has been suffering from deflation for years and years and years. All right, and this has led to pessimism basically in the Japanese economy. All right, and because of this pessimism prevailing, all right, it could have actually led to this low investment, low growth, and low confidence. So that's the part that you need to explain here. So one reason here, okay, why is it that this happened? You could link it to this part here about export orders. All right, so what has happened? Okay, you have seen how global financial crisis here has led to lower demand for Japanese exports. All right, and X being a component of your AD. All right, so what happens here is that when X falls, AD falls as well. All right, and when AD fall, your real national income, RNY, will decrease as well. All right, and because Japan has been reliant on your industrial exports, so this inevitably has an impact on various other sectors. Okay, and couple that with the credit crunch that we have seen. All right, so what happens when there's a credit crunch? So just now we mentioned what a credit crunch is. Credit crunch is essentially a situation whereby banks, because of bad loans, they lend out money, right? Banks, they lend out money. So if they can get it back, then fantastic, no problem. But sometimes they could result in this situation whereby they could have people who default, people who cannot pay back. All right, and when that happens, okay, the banks end up having to suffer these losses. So they become more wary about lending out this money. So what happened is when there's a collapse in property market, okay, the GFC was partly due to this. GFC happened in US. Okay, so US, there was the collapse in property market in US leading out to this global financial crisis. So banks, they also suffered the loss because when you buy house, you go and borrow from the bank. So banks lend out this money for them to go and buy these houses. And when they cannot keep up with the monthly mortgage payment, okay, your property market will suffer because there will be a lot of foreclosure okay. And when that happens essentially the whole economy become in a state of havoc in some sense. Okay, so banks start to become more cautious. So I might decrease as a result of this because what banks might do, they might increase the interest rate, and when you increase interest rate, cost of borrowing become more expensive, I might actually decrease. And you know the subsequent effect when I decrease AD and your real national income will decrease. Okay. And seeing everything that has happened, individuals may also lose confidence in the Japanese economy. Investors, especially foreign investors, might become more hesitant to go into the Japanese economy to invest. So again, I4, AD4, RNY will decrease. So these two reasons, all right, these two factors coupled together all right, led to Japan to be stuck in this rut of low investment, low growth, and low confidence. That's your answer for question C. Okay, moving on. So this is an ADAS question. So explain how the reconstruction spending suggested in extract 3 might have improved Japan's economic outlook. Okay, so there was the disruption caused by the earthquake, tsunami and earthquake. All right, and what happened was that the authority spent money on reconstruction spending. Okay, so what is this reconstruction spending? This reconstruction spending here is essentially talking about government spending on your government expenditure on your infrastructure. Okay, and this is the G component. All right, so using your ADS analysis, you can see how when your G increase, all right, if you recall G here, very special G. G, okay, you have the impact on your AD because G is a component of your AD. All right, and when G increase, AD directly will increase. So this is what we term as the short-term effect. So at least in the short term, this is what will happen. All right, and the unique thing about this increase in G, since it's expenditure on infrastructure, all right, this infrastructure spending, let's say you go and build roads, you rebuild your roads, all right, what it will do is that it will also attract investments. This will attract investment, and when there's investment, investment is essentially capital accumulation. Right, another term for investment is basically capital accumulation. So when there's capital accumulation, all right, if you recall our QQFOP, capital accumulation is equivalent to an increase in the quantity of your capital. When there is this capital accumulation, your QQFOP, okay, your quantity of your capital increase. And because of this increase, your LRAS will also increase. So that's why in the long run, you will see LRAS increasing. Long term. Okay, so this is what you will have to explain in your answer lah. Okay, I'll let you have a look through and then I will delete the writing. So reconstruction spending, like I mentioned to you, is government expenditure on infrastructure. So examples like building roads or schools, and AD will increase lah. So you have an increase in your national income by the multiplier effect. All right, so you can see that from the diagram here, you can see how AD will increase from AD0 to AD1. RNY will increase from Y0 to Y1. Price level, your GPR will also increase from P0 to P1. So this is what we term as a short-term effect. Okay, so as a result, there's positive economic growth. Like what I mentioned earlier, the capital accumulation, the investment will be attracted to come in when roads become more well developed. So previously, because of earthquake, the roads and all might have gotten destroyed or might not be even. So after you spend some money to improve on these road conditions and stuff like that, investments, okay, you could have domestic investment increasing, or it could be even foreign direct investments that come in. Okay, all these investments that come in result in capital accumulation. There's an increase in the quantity of capital, and this increase in capital would lead to an increase in your LRAS because it's an increase in QQFOP, your quantity of your factor of production. And when that happens, your productive capacity, your LRAS, all right, will shift rightwards. It will increase. All right, and so right now you have a new equilibrium Y2 lah, and you have P2 instead of P1. All right, so this one is actually decreased lah, because P0 increased to P1 and come back down to P2. All right. All right, so comment on the appropriateness of this suggestion. So based on, so how do we answer this question? This question requires us to actually make use of what is given in the extracts. So is this appropriate or not appropriate? So if you look at the extract, okay, the Japanese economy seem to be suffering from a deep recession because of the problems that they face. So reconstruction here seems appropriate because this this can be seen as a form of stimulus kind of policy. We're trying to use this reconstruction spending to bring about greater employment. All right, down here they mentioned that the deep recession could be a result of the world credit crunch. All right, and the earthquake that reduces business sentiments and hence investment expenditure. All right, so down here you have your world credit crunch. Remember your X decrease. Okay, and business sentiments affected, so your I also decrease. Okay, so if you actually undertake this, because these two will lead to AD to increase. All right, and your AD is made up of not just the two components, you have C plus I plus G plus X minus M, your net exports. Okay, so XI both decrease. So this decrease in AD, if you can use your government expenditure, your G to increase, such that this G increase is greater than your fall in X and your fall in I. So long as this can actually happen, all right, your AD might not necessarily decrease. It could actually increase instead. So it really depends on the extent. Okay, so reconstruction spending is also appropriate. Since infrastructure was damaged, and I think what happens here is that your increase in government expenditure here will help to boost production capacity. Because if all this damage that has been done, you don't do anything about it, you see a reduction in QQFOP. You see factories being destroyed. Okay, you see machines being destroyed. So there will be a decrease in the quantity of your capital. Lives were lost as well. You could see a decrease in the quantity of your labor. And if all this, you don't do anything about it, your production capacity, your RAS will actually have a shift to the left. So reconstruction spending here is seen as appropriate because of the accompanying increase in RAS in the long run, in the long term that we see earlier in the previous question. All right. However, okay, when you have commented a question, you always need to look at however as well. All right. Remember this thing known as crowding out effect, because what happens here? All right. For Singapore, for countries like Singapore, whereby we have very strong reserves, okay, such government expenditure, you can easily use your past reserves to kind of bear the cost if whatever you have in your budget at this point in time runs low lah. All right, but for countries who sometimes may have to actually resort to borrowing, this step of borrowing can actually crowd out investment because they will have to compete with the loaner, they will compete with your other firms for this limited loanable funds that is out there lah. So when there's an increase in the demand for loanable funds, interest rate may actually increase. And this is termed as the crowding out effect, as we see here lah. When this raises the cost of borrowing, your investors will cut back on their on the investment because if interest rate goes up, then they may be crowded out in this sense. That's why it's known as the crowding out effect. Okay, so with that, yeah, I hope you are able to answer the questions as we have seen and we have gone through. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. All right, so please, I will go through the rest, okay, with your subsequent week when I return. Okay, thank you.